Hello, I'm Aditya Ranade at Lux Research. This is my colleague, Sara Olson. We're part of the agro-innovation team here at Lux Research. And what keeps us awake at night is this huge global problem of ensuring food security for 9 billion increasingly prosperous people by 2050. The confluence of climate change and increasing prosperity and changing diet means this is a recipe for disaster unless we intervene with advanced technologies and smart policies. Speaking of which, Sara, certainly many options, obviously cutting waste in the distribution system, using modified crops, precision agriculture. How does one go about choosing between these options, or do we even have to?
The simple answer is there's no silver bullet. First off, we're going to need to cut food waste. The FAO estimates that we lose approximately 1/3 of global agricultural production between the field and the table. So that's step one. But certainly step two is modified crops, especially those that can get us at higher yields. Rothamsted Research in the UK, for example, has estimated that using C4 wheat, they can actually increase wheat yields from around 8 metric tons per hectare, which is about what you can get in the UK. It's about the gold standard worldwide, up to as much as 20 metric tons per hectare. It's a pretty significant increase in yield. So certainly that's going to get us part of the way to feeding these 9 billion people, but I get the impression it's going to take more than that.
Certainly. First of all, there's the question of yield stability to stresses abiotic and biotic stresses.
It's a big one.
And there's some good work going on at Australian Centre for Plant Functional Genomics in improving salinity tolerance for rice. A very important problem in countries like Vietnam and Philippines. And then there's the whole question of nutrition security. So more calories doesn't necessarily mean more nutrition. Right?
Not always.
And the whole question of biofortification, for example, vitamin A and vitamin B enhanced rice.
The golden rice,
The golden rice, right. Which was very controversial, if you recall a few years ago,
Yes.
the trials in China. Which leads me to my next question to you, is given the fact that the health effects are still under intense scrutiny for modified crops, these trials of modified crops in the developing world, is there an argument to be made that they are using the subjects as guinea pigs?
Well, that argument has been made, though I'm not sure it's valid. The underlying scientific process behind first-generation transgenics is horizontal gene transfer, and this is a process that is naturally occurring and is not, in and of itself, threatening to human health in any way. However, the effect of eating crops that contain these transgenic traits is certainly still up for debate. Lots of research has been done, a lot of money has been spent. Unfortunately, much of it has been done by folks with an axe to grind and a point to prove. One way or the other, but certainly there's been a fair bit from both sides. And so what we've ended up with is a very confused situation without consensus. So I think really to get us to that answer, it's going to take more research and independently funded research that can really get at the answer of whether there is even a health impact at all and its severity, if any.
Right. Now, assuming that this health debate is resolved one way or the other, as of today, how large is the footprint of modified crops?
You know, in the food system, it's not as pervasive as you would think. It's not as pervasive as the average consumer thinks. There's a fair bit of media out there that would lead you to believe that you have transgenic crops impacting a large portion of your food chain. Realistically, transgenic crops should be considered within the spectrum of 6-4-85. The big six agribusiness companies have spent the vast majority of their time and resources on the big four crops, which are corn, cotton, canola, and soy. And these four represent 85% of the acreage of modified crops planted worldwide. 85%. So what that ends up meaning is that there is a very small amount of work that's been done so far on other crops than these big four. It means we have gaps, rather large gaps, really, in the food system, and I don't know who's going to fill them.
I think it's the food companies. First of all, food companies have very strong brands, so they don't have the same need to protect the intellectual property or have patents that the seed companies do. So they're more open to working with seed banks and university research labs, so they can access the genetic diversity of seeds and seed banks, and on the other hand, take advantage of smarter breeding enabled by genomics, the costs of which are falling very rapidly, as you know. So on one hand, you have the smarter breeding enabled by genomics approach, and if the costs keep falling and the time frame keeps getting shorter, my question is, why would anybody go through the hassle of getting a transgenic crop approved?
Well, and that's a great question. And given the old style, if you will, of transgenics, those might fade if there weren't some new technologies on the horizon. But the good news is there are. We're seeing a whole generation of technologies that are leveraging knowledge of genomics and gene-to-trait correlations to develop approaches that allow for direct genome editing and genome manipulation, if you will, that get us at the same results without the same fundamental impacts to the genome of the crop we're working on. So these are things like the TALEN genome modification approach that organizations like the Two Blades Foundation and Selectus Plant Sciences have been working with. Then we also have the direct genome editing that's being done by Cebus, where they're using a mismatch oligonucleotide to generate the changes. And then we're even seeing things that are farther afield, like what Morflora is doing, where they're using plant viruses to make plasmids for exogenous gene expression in the plants without even getting into the genome. It's not even transgenic, but you get the same effect. So that'll wrap it up for us. Thank you so much for joining us today. If you'd like more information, please visit us at luxresearchinc.com or send us an email at info@luxresearchinc.com. Thank you.